Well, if it isn't a new Lumpkin video, sorry if this took way too long. I'm going through college now and things are kinda tight. Oh, and before we start, I feel like I should say this. This playthrough was recorded months ago, so a lot of it is probably outdated. Bosses might behave differently from what you see here, weapons and gear might be stronger or weaker. Don't use this video as a basis for your playthrough. Continuing from the last episode, we just beat Calamity, so after that, we gotta fight Plantera. The fight with Calamity Plantera isn't much different than regular Plantera. Plantera here is just more aggressive. The second phase is where it really gets harder. Plantera will start spitting green petals 3 at a time instead of 1 at a time, and shoots them so quickly that can overwhelm you quite easily. Not only that, but the petals are green. You know, exactly like the background. I'm not gonna say it's impossible to see because I could still see them, but when you throw in the other projectiles from your own gear, it can get confusing pretty quickly. Well, fortunately, Crab managed to take care of the remaining Plantera HP by himself, which prompted the dungeon to spawn new enemies and made a little something start growing in the jungle. It's called Perennial Ore. With Perennial Ore, you can make a handful of gear, such as Mangrove Chakram and the Reaver Armor Set. The Reaver's Armor Set bonus varies between classes, but the Rogue one makes it so you spawn Spore Clouds when you get hit, which is pretty cool, I have to say. So I chucked down a Spelunker Potion and went spelunking. Strangely enough, Perennial Ore is supposed to spawn in the jungle, or at least I have the impression that it should, but for some reason it spawned in the caves. Or well, it did spawn in the jungle, but it spawned a lot more in the caves. Well, after a few minutes of digging around, I had enough to make me some new toys. I made the Mangrove Chakram, or Chakram, however you fucking pronounce that, which surely is a nice weapon. Oh my god. Deals decent DPS, you can spam the shit out of it, but unfortunately it falls short from the other weapons I already have, so I ended up not really using it that much. We went to the desert to fight another boss, although I'd consider it a mini boss honestly, so it doesn't get the cool boss card. It's called the Great Sand Shark, and it's exactly what you think it is. It's a sand shark, but really big. It's quite challenging too, for a mini-boss that is. It drops the Grand Scale, which you can use to upgrade weapons into better versions of themselves, and also make a totally new rogue weapon called the Sand Slasher. I'm gonna be honest, it kinda sucks. I understand that the point of the weapon is to start slow and slowly pick up speed and damage, and it can deal a massive amount of damage, don't get me wrong, but because it's so clunky to use, it's really not good at all. Why would I deal with the clunkiness of a weapon to deal big damage when I can do big damage with a regular weapon? There's also the Dust Storm in a bottle, which is another rogue weapon made with the Grand Scale, but I didn't make it for some reason. So can't really have an opinion on a weapon that I never used. So it was Abyss time, and this time I needed Tenebris and I needed Depth Cells. I also needed a Ninja Tabby and a Black Belt. I was crafting the Status Ninja Belt. It gives me a small boost in damage and crit chance while also giving me a dash, better jump speed, ability to grapple walls, and the chance of dodging attacks. To make it I need a Frog Leg, 50 Purified Gel, 1 core of Ilium, and the Master Ninja Gear. And to make the Master Ninja Gear, I need a Tabby, a Black Belt, and a Tiger Climbing Gear, which in turn needs Climbing Claws and Shoe Spikes. As for the Depth Cells and Tenebris, I needed it to make a Poison Ballistic Bomb. Oh, and I forgot to mention I needed an Ink Bomb as well to make the Abyssal Mirror. The Abyssal Mirror requires a Black Belt, so I need 2 Black Belts, 5 Luminil, 5 Depth Cells, 8 Spectre Bars, a Mirage Mirror, which luckily I already have, and the Ink Bomb, which is a 2% drop for Cuttlefish in the Abyss. Might have noticed that it has been about 4 minutes into the video and I still haven't mentioned any bosses. Yeah, as you can see, Calamity has some pretty goddamn huge crafting trees, and the Status Belt and the Abyssal Mirror are actually one of the smaller ones. Now, equipped with the Status Belt and the Ballistic Poison Bomb, we travel to the Astro Infection biome. For this boss we're gonna need an arena, which instead of platforms, was made with planter boxes because Crabbar really likes them. There is one problem with them though, and is that they're technically not platforms, so my ballistic bombs can't go through them, which made this fight a little trickier than it should have been. Ostrom Aureus is one of the two bosses that we're gonna fight in the Ostrom faction. He's pretty basic. He just kinda like angrily stomps around and throws shit at you. So yeah, he's not that difficult. Most of the fight was just circling around him and oh, we died. Okay, ignore that. We fixed the arena and switched the planter boxes to platforms so my bombs would go through them. And after we did that, the boss was a breeze. I could just stay over him and dodge whatever crap threw at me. The ballistic bombs made short work of this guy, and by the way, they make short work of anything. Astro Aureus didn't really drop anything useful except for the Starlight Fuel Cell, which you can use to reduce the time that the adrenaline bar fills up. But it's not really gears, so there's not a lot to talk about here. I also got the Stellar Knife from one of the enemies that spawns in this biome, and although it's not really that good, it's a pretty cool weapon. And Crab also got the key to the Astro Infection dungeon chest, which had the Heavenfall Star Disc. It's pretty good, it deals a large amount of damage. It's quite ridiculous, but it's so clunky. The way it works is when you use it, it flies upwards and then it launches itself towards your cursor. If you are moving vertically, meaning if you're flying or jumping, it explodes into several projectiles, which all deal some extra damage. So as you can see, you gotta go through some hoops to make it work. But considering that most bosses are massive and you'll be flying during a lot of the fight anyway, it's not that bad, it's just a little weird. It also sucks if you're in a tight space, it doesn't go through blocks, so if you're in a corridor or the dungeon, you're kinda fucked trying to use this. I decided to go back to the Abyss and see if I could get the ink bomb again. It took me so fucking long. Even Crab came to help me at some point. And you'd think the giant squids would drop ink bombs, right? No, it's the cuttlefish. Well, eventually we did get it, or well, Crabbar got it while I was disconnected. At that point, I don't even remember why I needed it in the first place. I had to go back and look it up, but I did it. I got the Abysso Mirror. And with the Abysso Mirror in hands, it was time to fight the Leviathan, and this time, we're fighting it for real. Leviathan is one of the most fun boss fights in the entire game. The fight is actually two different bosses. One of them is the Siren, which spawns first. When the Siren gets down to around 65% health, Leviathan herself spawns in and the fight gets a lot harder. From here you got two choices. You can keep focusing the Siren to get rid of her quickly and only have to deal with Leviathan, but the problem with that is that you enrage Leviathan and she'll become a lot harder to fight. On the other hand, you could try killing Leviathan first, but that will enrage the Siren, and then the Siren will get a lot harder to fight. It's all about which one you think you struggle with less. When it came down to the Siren, I actually tried using the ballistic bomb because it was easier to hit. So, Leviathan didn't really drop any rogue toys, which is a shame, but she did drop an accessory called the Leviathan Ambergris. The accessory only really works underwater, which is kind of a shame, but it will be extremely helpful when I'm in the Abyss. Next part of the game you had to go through is a temple in the underground jungle. This place didn't really change from vanilla to Calamity. You still got your traps, lizards, flying snakes, spikes, and right at the end, the golem. You know the drill. When we got to the last temple room and made an arena, the game decided to get a little weird. Well, at least I still got the bag, so it's a win in my book. Calamity is also nice enough to make the golem always drop the pixel, so you don't have to grind him for it. I don't know if it drops every time you kill him or if it only drops on the first time you kill him, but it is a guaranteed drop, so that's very nice, saves you a lot of time. With the Pixel, we're now able to mine chaotic ore from the Abyss, which is exactly what we did. With chaotic ore, we're able to craft the Ataxia armor, which gives me some extra rogue damage, more speed, chance to not consume ammo, the Inferno effect at 50% health, 10% chance to release some fire whenever I attack, and 20% chance to explode when I get hit. That's a lot of things. I also opened the Crimson chest to get the vampire knives. They're not relevant right now, but they will be useful later. On the way there, I actually found a Martian scanner that triggered the Martian invasion. While we dealt with it, it was pretty uneventful and didn't really drop anything useful. So we've decided to do the Frost Moon because Crab wanted some mage weapons. That was good because the Frost Moon is my favorite moon, especially in Calamity, but We'll talk about that later. Frostmoon here isn't really that much different from vanilla, so if you know how it goes in vanilla, you know how it goes in Calamity. The only real noticeable difference is that everything deals a ton of damage, and that was enough for us to not be able to complete the entire thing. I did get a pair of wings though, so that was nice. Ramp didn't really get what he wanted out of the event, so we decided to do a second time, but that was postponed to when we actually made a proper base. Remember when I said way back in the first episode that you make some wooden shacks for your NPCs? I like to usually replace those wooden shacks with proper houses because I enjoy having nice things, but with Calamity being so hardcore, we didn't really have a lot of time to do that. Since the game had slowed down a bit though, we decided to make a couple nice looking houses. Now I really like marble, so I started gathering some. I also got some pearl stone bricks to maybe give the marble a nice touch of variety, I guess. We then started making our builds. We each made a separate house. Do comment on which one you like the most. Keep in mind though, if you don't pick mine, I will blacklist you from my comment section. After playing Architect, I stepped into the dungeon to farm for a Paladin's Hammer. I would use this hammer to make another hammer called the Fallen Paladin's Hammer. Fallen Paladin's Hammer is bonkers. It explodes on impact, inflicts a fire debuff, and inflicts brimstone flames debuff on top of it. And talking about debuffs, we had another boss fight to get through, this time in the jungle. Promptly made an arena that was completely ignored and never used. I'm still upset about that. Plaguebringer Goliath, or as I like to call him, Asshole, has a few different attacks. He can charge at you, he can spawn tiny assholes, and he has a special move not seen in any other boss. He disappears suddenly, for no reason. Okay, jokes aside, Terraria itself is a little unstable in multiplayer already, and when you throw in Calamity in the mix, you get some serious issues. Bosses will despawn for no reason, they'll desync, and boy, just you wait until you see the boss rush in multiplayer when it got high ping. So we tried again. And again. The Plaguebringer drops very good loot for Rogue, but it's quite unfortunate that I didn't end up getting any of it, and I sure as fuck ain't gonna be farming it. It drops the Syringe and the Malachite, which is a 1% chance of dropping. Although there is one thing that I got from the fight, and it's the Toxic Heart. The Toxic Heart by itself isn't very good, but when you put it together with the Alchemical Flask, the Hive Pack, and the Honeycomb, you get the Plague Hive. Plague Hive is very similar to the Hive Pack, in which it spawns bees when you take damage, but that's not all. The bees actually inflict the plague, which is a damage over time debuff. On top of that, all of my attacks inflict the plague, and I have a 12-tile white aura around me that also inflicts the plague on whatever enemy steps in. However, even though this item only requires items up to the Plaguebringer, it needs an Ancient Manipulator to be crafted, which means it's a post-cultist item, so I'm gonna have to hold off on it for a while. Next boss we're gonna fight is the Ravager. Ah! You guys like that? You guys like my boss impression? The Ravager is an interesting boss fight. Not because the boss fight itself is interesting, it's honestly one of the most forgettable bosses in Calamity. What he does is he spawns walls around him, which by themselves don't really do much, but he can lift them in the air and throw them down, and if that hits you, you're gonna take a lot of damage. After you deal enough damage to its limbs, the Ravager's head gets detached from its body and flies around shooting at you and just being a general annoyance. You know, just like a certain other boss out there. Yeah, good job, Lumpkin. But the reason the Ravager is interesting is because he drops bars and cores. So instead of going mining or farming monsters whenever you need those, you can just buy or craft a few Ravager spawners and stomp his head in for a few minerals. It's actually very useful. Oh yeah, he also has some rogue weapons, but they kinda suck, so I'm not even gonna bother with them. It seems the Ravager is just a farming machine, to be honest. After you get strong enough and you can stomp him, you can just turn on Armageddon and keep killing him over and over again for easy cores, bars, and money. That's really all he is. Farming fodder. But to end on a high note, there's still one last thing to do today. We gotta fight the lunatic cultists to spawn the pillars so we can finally fight Moonlord. We're not doing Moonlord in this episode, but we are on the next one, so stay tuned for that. You wanna know a fun fact? There's an enemy in the game called the Idolist, which dropped the Eidolon tablet. You can use the Eidolon tablet to summon the cultist, and the Idolist actually starts spawning as soon as hard mode starts, which means that you can fight Moonlord immediately after reaching hard mode, provided you got enough gear and skill to defeat the cultist and the pillars first. In any case, with the cultist out of the way, the amount of evil in the world is slowly decreasing. We have less foes in our way, and our hope shines a little brighter every time we defeat another one of these guys. And that marks the end of our episode for today, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. If you're new around here and you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe. This narrating style video was originated because Crab didn't really have a microphone, but I enjoyed it so much that I might very well start doing it for other videos too. I already have a few things planned out, and I think you guys will enjoy it. I would also like to thank my patrons for giving me much needed financial support in this time of need. Once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next decade when I finally decide to upload again.